And by the way, we're recording. Welcome to this second Mātauranga session, which is about funding and pūtea available and procurement. And we're joined by two rangatira in this space. We're really, really fortunate to have Kahurangi Malcolm and Renata Hakiwai join us and share all of their knowledge as much as we can get in 45 minutes. I'll just do a couple of housekeeping pānui, and then we'll get into the questions. So first of all, use the chat. So drop your name, say where you're from, say hello to each other so we know who's in this room. Make sure your mic is kept on mute. So as you can see, we are recording, and that's just so that we can make a video afterwards. Maybe turn it into a podcast like we did the last time, and we'll put this video, some notes up onto our members kiti on the website as well. Ko Katie Brown tōku ingoa, he iri tēnei no raukawa me Ngāti Whātua. I'm one of the co-founders of Te Hapori Matihiko alongside Lee Timu, who is over in Perth representing Aotearoa at the Indigenous Tourism event. So awesome to see our whānau spreading the word overseas as well. Big mihi to Ata, so Sunny and Kiriana, who have let me come and camp in their office today with nice lighting and good sound. It's much better than my home office, which is quite noisy at the moment. And just a couple of pānui about Matihiko. So we've got the Matihiko Awards confirmed for the 7th of July at Te Rauparaha Arena in Porirua. So mark that in your diary, everyone. So there'll be space for quite a few people to come along and support, both corporate tables and also seats. So going to put on a big show for you all, celebrate Māori excellence and Māori contribution in digital and tech. So really excited about that. Just wanted to highlight the Pātai Atu service, which is on our members kiti on the website. So that is an awesome service. If you have any pātai about anything, kaupapa Māori, tikanga Māori, te reo Māori, send it through and Emma will get back in touch with you within the week. So you might have to write a speech and you're not sure who you need to mihi to. You might need some help with the whakatauki. You might need some support, I don't know, in writing your mihi. Emma is available and able to help you with that. So definitely get into that. And LaDonna from our team will send a survey to you after this. So really encourage you to give us feedback so that we can keep making good stuff for you. We will have about 10 minutes after our pātai at the start for audience pātai, so definitely use the chat for asking those questions. And yeah, so let's move on to our guests and away from me. Like I said, we're really fortunate to have two amazing stars in this space in pūtea and funding, procurement. Kahurangi Malcolm and Renata Hakiwai join us. So my first pātai is around who you're from, who you are, where you're from, your iwi, where you've worked and where you're working now. And I'll start with you, Kahurangi.
Ka pai. Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko ngā maunga o Tāmaki Makaurau ngā maunga, ko te moana nui o rehua te manukatanga o Hoturua me te Waitemata moana, ko Waikato te awa, ko Tāhuna Kaitoto te marae, ko Ngāti te ata Wairohua te iwi. Ki te tau o taku whānau no te whānota, ko Pangaru te maunga, ko Hokianga te moana, ko Whakarapa te awa, ko Waipuna te marae, ko te Wairiki te iwi, ko te Wairiki te hapu. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Kahurangi Malcolm tōku ingoa, ko au te tehi o ngā kai whakahaere mō Puna Awarau, he Pakihi Māori e whakakōkiri ana i ngā take rironga pāpori Puna Awarau anō hoki. So I'm Kahurangi Malcolm and I'm one of the managing directors of Puna Awarau, which is a consultancy firm working at the forefront of Indigenous procurement in Aotearoa. So we set up this consultancy because we know that procurement is a powerful lever to create Māori outcomes and to empower our Māori businesses. And if we can open up supply chains, open up contract opportunities, open up pathways for our Māori businesses to get in with our big organisations that are procuring and spending money every day, then we can boost our Māori businesses, we can boost our Māori whānau, and we can boost the Māori economy. So that's why I went into business and started Puna Awarau alongside one of my colleagues, Frey Cairns. But my background has been in both social sector and business support. So when I came out of university, I did a Bachelor of Science majoring in nutrition and quickly fell into Māori health roles and realised that actually the kai that we put on our table is a direct reflection of the pūtea that we get in our pockets and the pockets of our whānau and our households. So if I want to change our health outcomes, I wanted to focus on how do we change wealth outcomes? How do we change the household whānau wealth so that whānau can make decisions beyond just week to week and getting the basics on the table. So went into that space and started a rangatahi organisation, looking at how do we make sure our rangatahi are pathwayed into education and employment pathways so that they can, live their lives of mana motuhake. And then went into economic development after that. So have had a bit of what I felt was a bit of a journey that went like this. When I went into Te Waka, which is an economic development agency in Waikato, my role was to focus on business support. So I gave out grants. I supported businesses with business advice. We ran Māori business events. We looked at ways that we could empower our Māori businesses across the Waikato region. But when I found this thing called social procurement, it was like my career journey made sense. All my grassroots activity of working on marae, and then my business experience of supporting our Māori businesses, it was like, for me, this was the thing that married those two together. It was using procurement as a lever to support our Māori businesses to create those grassroots outcomes so that our whānau could put more healthy kai on the table. So it's all kind of come full circle for me. And yeah, but my motivator for all of my roles has been Māori outcomes and the betterment of Māori. Yeah.
Laui. Oh, what an awesome career path. And I can see how all of the mahi that you've done contributes to this business that you have now. So awesome. Renata.
Kia ora whānau, he uri no Ngāti Kahungunu, o mā wahine, ki whare tua whānau Ngāti Parau. Ko marae, ko māhu, ko tua rōpaki, ko tua huru, me tūranga wāwai marae. And I'm the Managing Director for HTK Group, which is a professional services organisation with a mission to accelerate Māori business potential. And so we work with startups, with a big startup division, SMEs and large enterprise, and also a tier 2 or government provider. And so we work pretty much with businesses and organisations right across the spectrum. We've got a team of around 16 professionals, who sort of support Māori businesses, Indigenous businesses across the likes of Taiwan, Canada, Australia, across the world, to help them realise their own aspirations and potential. My background, I don't know what I'd say my background is, but everything. Been exited a few successful startups, worked a little bit in government, didn't like that. Worked with iwi, and now at the moment, we run our own organisation, and at the moment, just back at my marae serving and supporting our whānau through the floods. A little bit about me.
Really nice to know a little bit more about you. So we've got some more questions about procurement and funding. So you've told us a bit about how or why you got into the industry, but I'm interested in knowing, why is Māori procurement a good thing for Aotearoa?
I can probably start on this one. So I've kind of done a lot of research in my mahi as to the benefits of procuring for Māori businesses. I think when you're in working with Māori businesses, you can see the inherent impact that our Māori businesses have and the way that they embed Māori values and live and breathe those on a daily basis. But From a research perspective, which is where I love to come from, so that people can't argue with data and evidence, there's three things, and I call it the triple ripple effect. So one is the impact that Māori businesses have directly on their whānau, and being able to create that household wealth and that intergenerational wealth. Research shows that Māori businesses have a higher income on average than Māori employees. So if we can create more Māori business owners, start up more Māori businesses, support them, then we can actually drive that household wealth into our whānau. So that's the direct impact that they have on whānau. That's the first ripple effect, if you like. The second ripple effect is the wider impact that they have on the hapu iwi community. We know that Māori businesses are three times more Māori than the national average. So they create additional employment outcomes, and most of those, a lot of the time, are from our own whānau, from our own hapu, from our own iwi. Our connections are from our Māori networks. So being able to create that additional outcomes is good for the wider community, and their role models, right? If we all know successful entrepreneurs that have influenced our lives, and I can speak from my own experiences, they are game changers. They can show you that you don't have to go down the traditional path all the time of A, B, C. There's this other pathway of entrepreneurship, and research has shown there's actually a report that's come out about the Māori Frontiers report that shows that Māori businesses, they pave the way for others in their wake because they can actually see what they can become. So that's the second ripple, is that second ripple effect that they have on the whānau, hapu, community, and iwi. And then the third impact is the impact that they have on the broader Māori economy. The Māori economy is, this big thing that everyone raves about that's worth 70 billion or however much it is. A lot of people think that that's tied up in iwi settlements and iwi money, but it's actually in our whānau-owned businesses. Our whānau-owned businesses is the backbone of the Māori economy. In fact, 89% of our Māori asset base is held in the hands of our whānau-owned businesses and those that are self-employed. So if we want to grow the Māori economy, we actually have to invest and grow and tautoko our Māori businesses. So to do that, we need to look at how we can procure from them, right? So that we can have that triple ripple effect and boost not only the Māori economy, but we're in Aotearoa. It boosts the entire Aotearoa economy. So that's why I'm a big advocate for procuring from our Māori businesses, is because one, they can do the job, which is, that's the kind of basics of procurement. You procure a goods or a service, but the inherent impact that goes beyond just delivering that good or that service is so much more.
Are we? Renata, would you have anything to add to that?
I'd probably just total for everything she says. I suppose that, for me, it's that multiple bottom line outcomes that you can get from procuring Māori businesses. For Māori businesses, we seem to hire our own jobs. We say jobs is a good pathway to wealth creation, and so. And when you create jobs for our whānau, it is the flow on effect, the social outcomes, bread and butter on the table, whānau actually working on a career path, and gets them out of the system, gets the beneficiary that a lot of our whānau are in. And so totally agree. I can't add anything else but that. So. Taking all my ideas here.
So I guess, the next question is what funding in Pūtea is available for Māori businesses? I know Kahurangi, you put a bit of a list together.
Yeah, I can kick off if you want, but unless you want to, Renata.
Hey, ladies before gentlemen.
Ka pai. Well, as I mentioned, one of my previous roles was working at Te Waka, which is the Waikato Economic Development Agency that looks after kind of economic development in Waikato. And so when I was in that role, I got to a little bit of exposure to the business support ecosystem and what funding is available for businesses that are wanting to grow. I have got a couple of funding examples of organisations that you can go to. I will just do a disclaimer that please look at their websites and don't take my word for it. The criteria and processes are all different for every single one. But one place that's really good and has been around for a long time is Pūtea Trust. So they do different funding for kind of capital equipment up to a certain amount, and they can pay 50-50 for those. So 50% they fund and 50% you fund. They also do 50-50 funding for capability development. So if you're looking for support around business planning or financial forecasting or marketing or those types of things where someone coaches you to do it, they can 50-50 fund that. And that's the same for any regional business partner provider. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but regional business partners, if you look them up, there's a different organisation in each store here that administers that same funding. So in Auckland, it's Tātaki, and in Waikato, it's Soda, and up north, it's Northland Inc. But it's usually your economic development agency or chamber of commerce. There's also Callaghan Innovation Funding for new innovative ideas. So they've got startup, getting started grants, which is just kind of pilot innovations all the way up to the kind of bigger innovations. But again, it's always, I think for them, it's 60-40. So you pay 60% and they'll fund the 40%. All of them have their different application processes. So Callaghan is quite an intensive process in my experience. Māori Women's Development Inc. do loans. So they do low interest loans for those that can't get a loan through the bank, which, you know, lots of people can't or don't want to. There's Te Puni Kōkiri that do different grants as well around Māori capability development. Some iwi also offer grants. I know Waikato Tainui in particular help with startup, and which is a really rare thing to find. Like in my experience of working with businesses, it was really hard to find grants for the startup space because it's quite high risk for organisations to fund grants in this space. Then there's Māori business accelerators like Kōkiri. In fact, I think they're the only one. But there are other accelerators outside of Kōkiri that are kind of on the mainstream. So Kōkiri focus specifically on Māori businesses and give them that mentoring and wraparound support and then a little bit of a cash injection. But there are other accelerators like Sprout, which is one I think in Taranaki that focuses specifically on agri and food businesses. And then there's Soda again in Waikato that have a incubator accelerator function. There's Akina that does impact readiness investment funding for those that are looking to look for further investment if they've got an impact focus. So I guess there's lots of pots of funding. There's lots of pots of little pieces here and there with Pūtea, but everyone has their own different criteria for starters and different processes, and some can be really time consuming. Some will ask for your business plan, your financial forecast, and your firstborn child, you know, and then others will just be a kōrero and then, cool, give me a quote, we'll go from there. But I think for any business that's looking for business support, it's understanding why you're going for different grants and what benefit that'll give to your pakihi. And is it going to be worth the time and energy put into going for that funding in the first place? I think you were sharing before a couple of your experiences, Katie, around going for funding and things, and it can be really time consuming and can feel like you're giving a lot and not receiving as much back in return. But there are, so that's business support funding. And then if you're a charitable organisation, there's a really great platform called GEM Local, and that's gives you all of the kind of philanthropic funding that's coming out and the deadline, so you get notifications. Like, it's really a helpful tool if you're in the charity space. And then on the procurement side of things, we've got Amotai, which is an organisation that connects buyers with Māori businesses, and obviously GETS, which is the government electronic tendering service where government put up all their contracts. And TenderLink is another one that's similar to GETS, and lots of councils tend to use that one as well. But yeah, there's lots of different kind of pots and places, and it is really challenging to navigate, especially if you're coming into this space for the first time and haven't had to do it before. But yeah.
And I think just for gets as well, if you're registering, make sure you tick the box to say that you're a Māori business as well, because they're not that good at recording how much Māori procurement is happening at the moment. But I think doing those sorts of things will help be able to track, right?
Yeah.
Renata, would you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'd probably say every government agency has support for businesses in one way or another. Like, for example, MSC, the way they support businesses probably through the likes of the Mana Mahi and the apprenticeship scheme, for example. So I'd say nearly every government agency has support for businesses. It's just a matter of what you're looking for in that support. I'd say, in the startup space, there is, we've got your HTK Group, runs 3 accelerators or incubators, similar to Pūtea. So there's opportunities there. They're a Callaghan, we're a Callaghan innovation provider for that. The other, we also run a venture capital fund as well. And so for those who are in the startup space, venture capital is also another way of not fund, well, yes, funding, but raising capital. And for those that don't know what venture capital is where whether you're seeking investment from a fund, a firm, or even an angel investor, and they become a part of your journey for equity, or sometimes through venture debt. And then there's also private equity funds. So if you're already an established business looking to increase or scale, there are private equity firms out there that can help fund or become a part of your journey. But just remembering that the difference between private equity and venture capital is venture capital is really sort of focused on high growth, global scale, and reach, and generally focus on startup, early stage, series 1, potentially series 2. Startups where private equity is really focused on those firms and businesses that are established and looking to scale and grow. So those are probably just some other avenues to explore with regards to funding or raising capital.
Awesome, thank you. So I guess the next part is if people in this group want to get started, what's some kind of things that they should consider? What's some stuff that they should start getting together to be able to apply for funding or go for some of those big contracts? Renata, maybe I'll start with you this time.
Yeah, no worries. I'll always say before you go for if you're looking to raise capital or you're looking to go for funding, always ensure that you have your ducks in a row, and you have your business plan. You've got your strategy in place, or you've got a clear line of sight, and you've provided a clear line of sight as to what you want to do and what you want to achieve and where you're going. That just makes things easier in the process. And it depends what process it is. I'm going to say that a lot of government procurement processes are pretty bloody horrible to go through, especially if you're constrained for time, and if you're a one-man operator. Actually, they're just horrible processes. But some are actually pretty good as well. But I would say always have your business plan, and always have your ducks in a row, ready to go. It's just one last, one thing you don't have to worry about. The other thing I always say is when you're going to look for funding, my advice is don't go out with your hand out. Actually go out and actually ask for advice. And generally, when you ask for advice, it comes with funding. But the last thing you want to do is go there with your hand out, because generally, gets slapped down. So that's my advice anyway.
Hold up, Kahurangi.
Yeah, I totally tautoko that. Yeah, I totally tautoko that. I think understanding why you're going for funding is a big thing. You know, when I used to administer funding grants myself, a lot of people were there because they had heard that you can just get pūtea, but they didn't really understand why they wanted it or what it would be good for, what the criteria of the fund was, and that it wasn't just kind of free pūtea for all. You know, it was. So I think understanding exactly why you need pūtea and for what part, and then figuring out, yeah, is it going to be worth your while to go for those opportunities? And yeah, I think that's really good advice. They're not going with a handout, is looking for, because advisors can often recommend other options or better options, you know, outside of what they can actually provide as well. So being able to go and just kind of whakarongo, yeah, tūwhera te mahunga, ngā whakaaro, ki ngā, yeah, ngā whakaaro o te atu, just going with an open mind and the ability to listen and take in what others have to say as well. And the space, I think, is really important.
Yeah, can I just add in there as well, is also when you're going, I find it more palatable as if from the other side of the fence, as if you're actually going and you've got skin in the game. So, and what I mean skin in the game is if you're contributing something, or if you're saying, hey, I'll put up 20%, I need support, or if there's other contributions to what you're trying to raise, because what that sees is a de-risking process. So say a funder say you're looking to raise $10, for example. If you're asking for the full $10, you know, there's probably a lot more work, but if you're only asking, you're wanting to raise $10, but you've already got $7 from co-investors or co-contributors, it might make it would probably make the process easy, because you know, whatever your project or initiative or whatever you're looking to do with your business is de-risked, because if one falls, you can still continue. So just something to think about.
And also having your financials ready to roll, eh? So some of those funds or grants that are given, you've got to have all your last 2 years financials for your Pākehī ready to roll. So those sorts of things are quite good just to have from your accountant or whoever does your numbers, because they'll probably ask for them. The next part is around, I guess, the challenges that you see for funding in the funding and procurement space, and what we can do to navigate around them. I'll start with you, Kahurangi.
Oh yeah, there's heaps. Yeah, there's heaps of challenges. One is just knowing what is even out there. You know, it's so challenging to navigate the system often, to find out what's going to be best for you and your Pākehī. But kind of on the procurement side of things, like Renata mentioned, that the government procurement system can be a real pain. And that's why, you know, we've kind of gone into the area that we've gone into, is to try and help organisations to break down some of those processes so they're not so cumbersome on our Pākehī Māori. But I guess from supplier side, one of the things is like looking at the weightings of an organisation or a procurement process to see what do they actually value. Because often, you know, if an organisation is talking about how much they're really wanting to engage and procure from Māori businesses, but then you look at the weighting and there's nothing in there to whakamana those values and those whakaaro, then you'll know that it's really, they're going to be focused on lowest price, those types of things. So I think interrogating the procurement a couple of times just to see what are they asking for, what do they value. And then if it's on gets, then you'll know that it's an open competitive tender. Whereas if they're just sending you an invitation to a smaller process, like what we call a closed tender, where they're only sending it to a few, then you've got a better chance at winning those contracts. Or if they're just engaging you directly and they can engage you with a direct award, then that's like the best, because it breaks down where you don't have to go through those big, massive processes. And there are organisations that can do that. depending on the level of spend. So for smaller levels of spend, often they'll have thresholds, and you'll be able to go and engage. If it's say, for example, some organisations will be able to spend 100,000 or under with a direct relationship, but then if they're doing like a multi-million-dollar thing, they might have to put it up on Gets. So understanding what procurement you're kind of going for, and then what's underneath those, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Renata?
Yeah, I was going to say for those who are already established businesses and are looking to grow and work in the government sector, it might be worthwhile trying to become all the government involved. Our organisation is on the all the government provider panel for consultancy services, and at a tier 2. So tier 1s, you've got 4 or 5, the big 4 or 5, and then we're sort of just at that level below. But what that has provided us as a business is that we don't generally go on Gets. Is that we go through a closed tender process, and sometimes actually not a tender process, it's just an RFQ, so request for quote, and God bless the government panel, because writing RFPs and those proposals are pretty, it takes a lot of time. So if you're looking to work with government, I would suggest even looking at becoming a government provider. Yeah, so that's and getting on those panels. Some of the risks, I think there's probably going to be some political risks you get from government around the procurement. That's always probably something that's always in the back of my mind around, it only takes a change of government to change targets or policies. Probably something for me in business, it's always about how you spread the risks, how you should ensure that you have multiple revenue streams, both commercial, government, and from the wider sector.
Now we do have a couple of minutes for some pātai in the from our audience. So I will just ask this one actually. Oh yeah, here we go from William. I'm curious to know how you can distinguish tier 1 and tier 2 businesses.
From all of government, they call it the AOG process. They have their own criteria around how they establish tier 1 and tier 2s, and that sort of criteria has a mixture of things. So capability, capacity, your turnover, potentially over the last 3 years, and so, for example, you got a big firm like in the consultancy sector, you've got a big firm like Deloitte, who probably turns over $1 billion a year. It's probably got about 300-400 staff. It's probably registered to have a multiple capabilities in the organisation. So that's how they determine their tier levels for all the government provider panels. There's probably when you talk about construction, they've got a different process around what's a tier 1, like a Fulton Hogan or
So we've got a pātai from Shani. Are there any business mentors for funding out there, and how do we access them?
There are business mentors, so there's Business Mentors New Zealand, that is kind of volunteer network essentially of mentors that give their time. But in terms of mentors for funding, Renata might know of some, but I just saw that there's a pātai of organisations that can help with procurement opportunities, and I do know that there is Height, which is another Māori-owned business, and Te Puni Kōpiri does offer funding to be able for them to support Māori businesses to go for procurement opportunities, so responding to RFPs and things like that, and building that that tendering muscle essentially, because it is an art form, you know, it really is, and some people have people that are completely dedicated to this stuff, that do, you know, just full-time job bid writing, but you know, for lots of us that are owner operators or, you know, just really short on time, we don't have that capability to be able to dedicate staff to doing it. So yep, there's height that does that space, but in terms of mentoring for funding, I think it's probably lots of just kind of business coaches will know some of this stuff, but Renata might know as well.
Yeah, just around mentoring these Mentors New Zealand, which is a free service. I'd say our organisation, HTK Group, does a lot of sort of mentoring and support around RFP writing. Not necessarily in the construction sector though, more in the sort of consultancy, professional services, sort of innovation sector. So sort of different to the likes of Heights. And like Kahurangi was saying, it's quite hard for those who are owner operators, unless you've got time. But yeah, it's a bit of an art form. But I think once you get your first and second underway, you've got a basis for any other RFP and contracts that come up. Because it's something, once you get a couple underway, a lot of it after that becomes doing a bit of cut and paste, and then the kaupapa just changes. It's a bit like a whai kōrero. You have your sort of tau parapara and all that up front, and then the kaupapa kōrero is different, and then you have your end. So it's a bit like RFP writing.
I love that. That's cool.
Awesome. Cool. I think we've reached the end of our partai. Yeah. So Te Puni Kōkiri also has their Māori Business Growth Fund, which, you know, you could talk to your regional advisor. I think the key thing there is get onto your regional advisor, and then they can help you and, you know, have a look at the criteria. But I know from my experience, I'm working with Kim Hill from Strategy. She's awesome. And she's been really helping me with my business growth. And so she has a lot of knowledge, and that's through Te Puni Kōkiri and their system. So a few hoops to jump through to get it, but definitely worthwhile going for that additional support. And there's some awesome links being put in there. So thank you, Josie, for sending those through. Cool. Well, what we're going to do after, so we'll close off, I think, Kahurangi, if we can close off with the karakia from you. So we'll close off with the karakia, and then afterwards, the ones that want to stay on and meet each other, just stay on. Otherwise, really awesome to have you all join us today. We want to keep doing more sessions like this. The next one's Wahine Māori in Digital and Tech. So that will be a really good one to get along to. Yeah, Josie, I can see you. Maybe you can be up here. Yeah, don't forget to do the survey, and also just keep in touch with us and let us know what would be valuable for you, because we'll hustle and try and get the people up on the pie for you to listen to. So ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Kia ora.
Ai, o tēnā koutou katoa te Hapori Matihiko, me karakia tātou. Kia tātou katoa, te ata whai o tō tātou arikia i hukaraiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga taitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, amene.
And a huge mihi to our two speakers. Thank you so much for sharing all your Mātauranga. Big claps and mihi to you. And we're really, really grateful. I can see a lot of people very excited about the knowledge that they're taking away with them today. Kia ora.
Kia ora.